My background real quick, I was born and raised in San Antonio. My folks still live in the house I was born into. Went to Texas A&M University, got a degree in computer science. I always say I did more of the M than the A in Texas A&M. And then when I graduated, I went straight into the CIA. I was an undercover officer for 9 years. I was the guy in the back alleys at 4 o'clock in the morning collecting intelligence on threats to the homeland. Spent 2 years in DC, 2 years in India, 2 years in Pakistan, 2 years in New York, a year and a half in Afghanistan, where I ran all of our undercover operations. And one of the things that I collected intelligence. I was the guy recruiting spies, instilling secrets, but I also had to brief members of Congress. And after doing that for 9.5 years, I realized most of them were morons and decided to do something about it. You know, my mama said, you're either part of the problem or part of the solution. And so I ran for office. I lost. Then started a cybersecurity company. Basically broke into banks, stole their money, and showed them how we did it. And the opportunity came to run again. I took it, and back in November, with many of y'all's help, we got elected. So I've been in Washington for a whopping 9 weeks. And I've had a pretty negative opinion of Congress for the last 20 months while I was running, and that opinion hasn't changed much, right? But the thing that's exciting for me is being up there fighting on the issues that are important to y'all. You know, one of the issues I've been asked in every stop, earlier this week, we started off in Midland, went to Monahans, Pecos, Fort Stockton, Crane. We were in we were in Devine this morning. Devine and Hondo will be here, going down to Brackettville, and then be in Del Rio later. And one of the issues everybody brings up is Iran. And what is the president doing negotiating with the Iranians? And the Iranians are a real threat. If they get the nuclear weapon, they're going to use it. And we need to do everything we can to make sure that doesn't happen. You know, another thing people ask me about is ISIS. You know, these terrorists that are cutting off people's heads and burning people's bodies. We need to make sure that our men and women in the military have all the tools they can to fight these guys, because they are a danger to our country, and we need to do everything we can to eliminate them. And it's great being in Washington, D.C. and having a role on these issues. Another issue I know is near and dear to y'all's heart is the EPA and the overreach of the EPA. And the EPA trying to redefine navigable waterways, right? Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Okay, there's plenty of them out there. There's probably a few of y'all here in the room today, right? But what EPA is trying to do in changing, you know, what is a navigable waterway, the only reason to want to get on a dry creek bed is to get on your property, right? And that's unacceptable. And there's going to be some legislation coming out of Congress making sure that the U.S., the Army Corps of Engineers, define a navigable waterway the way it's always been defined. Right, so this is some of the things that we're doing up in Washington, D.C. to fight things. And look, when I leave Washington, I usually tell Stoney I'm going back in the real world, right? and it's nice being back here. I still live in San Antonio, but I crisscross this district as much as I possibly can to hear about y'all's concerns, hear about y'all's issues, right? And I'm here to fight for y'all, right? I am the person, I am y'all's advocate to fight the bureaucracy. And one day, I was at an event in San Antonio, and this young woman, young wife, hands me a letter, and she says, sir, Miss Congressman Hurd, can you read this? And it was about her husband. Her husband was an Iraq war veteran. He was in the Army, hit an IED, blew off his legs. He had to get his legs amputated above the knee. He got medically discharged from the military. He's on VA benefits, Social Security benefits. Social Security sent him a letter that said, as of January 27th, you're no longer disabled. Excuse me? Right? Is his legs growing back? Right? And so to be in a position to help a guy like this, to make sure he continues to get his benefits, the benefits he earned by being willing to risk the ultimate price to keep us safe. That's why I'm here. Whether it's Medicare problems, you know, the community health center here is getting ready to go off a fiscal cliff and making sure that they're able to provide services to the community. And again, y'all have different needs than San Antonio or El Paso, all right? I'm not an idiot. I know that 50% of the vote is in San Antonio, another 30% is in El Paso. But my title is representative. And I represent all 29 counties of this district, not just the big ones. And so that's why I'm out here today. I'd love to take some questions if y'all have them. And I'm taking pearls of wisdom as well too. I may need some help. You know, Billy Long was telling me some things. I may need to fact check that, you know, a little bit later. But it's great to be here, and I appreciate you, sir, for letting me have some time to talk. So, questions?
I got one.
Yes, sir.
Are we going to lose our influence in Iraq since the Iranian troops have moved in and helped the Iraqis?
It's a danger. It is a danger. The question was, are we going to lose our influence in Iraq because the Iranians are coming in and helping, right? It's a possibility. It is definitely a possibility. And Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, came and spoke at Congress last week to talk about the problems with Iran. And like he said, and look, the Iranians are fighting ISIS because ISIS is a problem to them. But the enemy of our enemy is still our enemy, right? And we need to make sure that we're doing everything in the region so that Iran doesn't have any more influence. Because ISIS is a threat to everyone. It's a threat to the Egyptians, it's a threat to the Jordanians, it's a threat to the Turks. And these are the folks that we should be working with to be our boots on the ground to continue to fight this battle. Let's continue to bomb them. You know, we have the greatest Air Force, whether it's fixed wing or unmanned aerial vehicles. We need to continue to put the pressure on them. But that's why we got to continue to stay engaged so the Iranians don't have more power. But thanks for the question.
I keep thinking about how they say our military has decreased. Is there any talk in Washington at all about ever putting the draft in again?
There's no. So the question is, you know, there's talks about how the military is decreasing. Have you put the, you know, are we going to put a draft in? There's no talk of a draft, right? Part of the issue is funding for the military. I was actually on a phone call driving up here today. Everybody's heard about sequestration, right? And these were kind of arbitrary cuts that are hurting the military. Del Rio, Laughlin Air Force Base, right? If it rains more than an inch, the entire flight deck gets flooded. Laughlin Air Force Base produces more pilots than any other facility in the world. And when it rains too much, they can't fly. That's outrageous. And the reason that is because of sequestration. And so we're trying to figure out how we create a budget that can be balanced, but also make sure the military has what it needs in order to keep us safe. Because look, when I was in Afghanistan, I was chasing at least 24 credible threats to the homeland. This is 2009. The threat has only gotten more complicated, it's only gotten more diverse, and in a time when the world is getting more complicated and dangerous, our focus on the military is getting less. That's not the way to do things, right? And so we got to find a way to make sure that we're able to keep America strong. But thank you for that, sir. Next question.
Is there any deal they can come up with securing the border? Because they can come across the border.
Right.
Both sides, doesn't matter.
Right. So the question was, is there any deal we can actually secure the border? And I think the answer is yes, right? There is a bill in the House that I'm a co-sponsor of that we're trying to do that. And the first thing, when we talk about border security, there's two things. Interdiction, stopping the bad guys, right? We need to work with our Mexican partners in Mexico. We need to have tools. You know, look, building a fence from sea to shining sea ain't gonna fix the problem, okay? Y'all all know that. You know, we took 25 members of Congress to San Diego, Tucson, and McAllen. And in Tucson, they have one of these huge bollard fences, right? They spent $5 million a mile for this fence. They have these huge concrete bollards that are about 5 feet tall and then about 10 feet of normal screen. So what the narcos did, they came in, cut that screen, brought a ramp, put it on top of the bollards, and drove a 1-ton truck over that ramp, right? So a fence isn't going to stop it. But using technology like aerial vehicles, some of the aerostats, those balloons that you see in outside of Valentine in West Texas and outside of McAllen in South Texas, making sure we have additional manpower, right? In certain places, You don't need trucks, you need people on horseback, right? And so looking at each section of the border, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And the problem is with the political leadership of Border Patrol in Washington, D.C. and Department of Homeland Security in Washington, D.C. I will go, when we went on this trip, I would talk to the senior Border Patrol, the senior ICE guy. I would talk to the county sheriff and say, what are y'all's problems? What do you need, right? And then flying to the next city, you would have the political leader of DHS or Border Patrol, and I'd ask him the same question. What does this sector need? And he would literally say the exact opposite of what the guy on the ground said they needed, right? And so that's one of the issues. So this is one, but we also need to enforce our laws as well, right? You know, we have plenty of laws on the books, we need to enforce them. And you can see some legislation along with our border bill at the same time to address it. So I'm hopeful, I think we can. I've been on some pretty nasty borders myself, and this is an area where I know something about it. But thank you for the question. Anything else?
Executive orders.
Executive orders.
Congress is trying to be made irrelevant by this president. All presidents do it, but with executive orders and czars, he's trying to make y'all irrelevant. Why are y'all aren't fighting anymore?
Well, we're fighting them, right? The attorney generals of the states are helping us out in that, right? They filed a number of lawsuits about the president's overreach and executive action, and that the law, you know, we're starting to win in the court of law, which is good. In areas where we can cut back funding and turn that spigot off, we're trying in areas that make sense. So you're absolutely right. This president has overshot, you know, whether it's EPA, whether it's OSHA, you know, you name it. It's not just overreach with his pen, it's overreach by the federal agencies. Part of that is reducing the size and scope of the federal government, right? Now, I'm on the Homeland Security Committee, and I'm on the I'm a chairman of an Information Technology Subcommittee, okay? When I ran for Congress, I never thought I'd be talking about IT procurement, okay? It's not a sexy topic. Nobody really cares about it. But here's why you should care about it. The federal government spends $80 billion, with a B, on buying computers, technology, software. 80% of that is outdated stuff. Stuff that we would think, you know, is super old, right? Now, why does this matter? I'm in a position to cut back some of that. And when you cut back that, you're reducing the size and scope of the federal government. And we need to be doing that in all the agencies, right? So that's where Congress can use their responsibility and their role to make sure that we keep the president in check. But you're absolutely right, and I appreciate that.